I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States.
Donald Trump knows that America's strength is America's people.
President Trump's mindset is to work tirelessly and help restore America.
Joe Biden won't stand up for America. Donald Trump will.
Americans who don't just talk, they act. That was our daughter. That's President Trump.
By the grace of God and the compassion of President Donald John Trump, I am free.
President Trump will fight with all his strength to preserve our way of life.
To the hardworking men and women across America, you are the reason he is going to keep fighting for 4 more years.
This is the most important election in the history of our country. And when I'm reelected, the best.
Production in terms of content, in terms of the disparity in guests, I just think the Republicans just knocked it out of the park. And if you don't believe this thing is tightened up, Steve, Joe Biden says he's actually going to start campaigning after Labor Day. He didn't plan on doing that, I am sure, unless this thing is tightening up. He's got to actually try to earn this now.
Well, Joe Biden is not waiting because obviously he's, we had heard that the
you say he's waiting until after Labor Day.
The polling, right, to leave the place. But yesterday, for the first time, suddenly out of nowhere, Joe Biden does 2 interviews, Anderson Cooper and Andrea Mitchell. Meanwhile, the President of the United States, this essentially summarizes it. Keep me in this house. Trump says, I kept my promises. Biden will lead to chaos. That's what essentially he said in his 70-minute-long speech. Joe Biden was less than half that length. Griff Jenkins has been there during both the conventions and joins us with the highlights of the finale to last night's big show on the South Lawn. Griff?
Boy, it sure was. Steve, Ainsley, and Brian, good morning to you. And those fireworks, Brian, you mentioned, how did they do it? It's America's first family of fireworks. They call themselves the Grucci family. Did that. They had a permit to do so, and it was worthy of a 4th of July celebration. And they did it as the president accepted that nomination. And he promised that the best is yet to come, but he was warning of a future under Joe Biden. Watch.
Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism. No one will be safe in Biden's America. My administration will always stand with the men and women of law enforcement.
The president speaking from the South Lawn, where more than 1,000 supporters sat in chairs, most of them not wearing masks, as the president highlighted his coronavirus response. He praised the economy, and he drove home a law and order message.
If the Democrat Party wants to stand with anarchists, agitators, rioters, looters, and flag burners, that is up to them. But I, as your president, will not be a part of it.
The president was introduced by his daughter Ivanka, who made a strong case for a second term for her father.
To the hardworking men and women across America and here tonight, you are the reason my father fights with all of his heart and all of his might. You are the reason he ran for president in the first place, and you are the reason he is going to keep fighting for 4 more years.
Meanwhile, a major Twitter storm from Joe Biden, more than a dozen in real time, like this one. When Donald Trump says tonight you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America, look around and ask yourself, how safe do you feel in Donald Trump's America? Now, outside the White House last night, Senator Rand Paul. What's next? Well, the president heads to Manchester, New Hampshire today to make remarks, and here in D.C., thousands of protesters will be in the streets in an organized march marking the anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington. Brian, Ainsley, Steve.
Okay, thank you so much, Griff. Yeah, you mentioned Rand Paul. Rand Paul was walking away from the White House. And
it's attacked by his neighbor and can't even walk down the street at work. Unbelievable.
No, broken ribs.
Yeah, meanwhile, the president spoke for 70 minutes yesterday, but the lineup prior to that, if you're looking for big celebrities that are starring in sitcoms, look for another convention. Instead, you get people that were free from prison. You get parents that were saying they appreciate the support that their that they got, even though their daughter was unable to be reclaimed from ISIS, but the support he's gotten. Real life stories, real accomplishments, and even people that got a chance to know him, like Herschel Walker and Dana White, that says this is the guy we need. So the guy that was so acceptable, was not up for the job, according to Michelle Obama, had a list of accomplishments and had a lot of supporters and a lot of diverse so-called average everyday Americans who were trumpeting his cause. Here's the president.
This is the most important election in the history of our country. At no time before have voters faced a clearer choice between two parties, two visions, two philosophies, or two agendas. This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our cherished destiny. This election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it.
So as the president wrapped up his speech last night, it went a little bit longer than many people thought, and then it was great for them to go into the musical during the recap show with Brett Baer, Brett Hume, and company. So we heard a lot of opera in the background, the most opera I've heard in quite some time since some episodes of The Odd Couple. Couple of things ring out. Number one, how talented the Trump family is, from Ivanka to Eric to Don Jr., and how underutilized Melania has been. Her speech was fantastic. It really captured the coronavirus and the challenges.
And the American dream.
And the American dream. And in terms of the president being proud, talking his cause, and to see them as eloquent as they were throughout the 4 days, I think is pretty impressive, even though we've got a chance to really meet them over the last 4 years. Let's bring in Hogan Gidley now, National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign, but spent a lot of years in the White House seeing them up close and personal. So, Hogan, despite the critics who said, don't use the White House, it's a violation of the Hatch Act, not only did the president use the White House, he used the whole lawn, put a live audience in, had the Washington Monument as the backdrop, and off go the fireworks. So what do you think the message is?
Well, what an incredible exclamation point put at the end of a wonderful week, outlining the greatness of America. It is the land of opportunity. It is the land. Telling everyone that America is inherently evil, that it is the cause of the world's problems, and that is a flat-out lie. This country is the greatest idea ever realized, a beacon of hope, of compassion, of strength, of freedom around the world. And that's what we talked about. And we didn't use the Hollywood elites. We used the heartland to tell everyone this is how amazing our country is. It was real people who not only praised this country for the opportunities they've been afforded here, they couldn't get anywhere else. They also praised the president's policies and pointed out how he has positively impacted their lives. It was an incredible week. I was so blessed to be a part of it.
Well, when you contrast the two conventions, it was very clear, and the Republicans reminded everybody of this during the DNC. Joe Biden really never denounced the violence that has been sweeping our nation, which continues to this day. I want your reaction to Mr. Biden, but first, before that, you're talking about the everyday heroes who were featured at the RNC. One of an everyday hero nobody knew about was David Dorn. He was a retired police captain who was killed during some of the protests in St. Louis. His wife spoke out about what is happening in the country. There's Mr. Dorn right there, Captain Dorn. Here's his wife. Listen to her, and then your reaction to what's going on in the streets.
As I slept, looters were ransacking the shop. They shot and killed David in cold blood. I learned of all this around 4 a.m. when our doorbell rang. The chief of police was standing outside. I wondered why Dave had not answered the door. I let in the chief, and fighting back tears, he uttered the words every officer's spouse dreads. I relived that horror in my mind every single day. My hope is that having you relive it with me now will help shake this country from this nightmare we are witnessing in our cities.
So heartfelt, so awful what that family has gone through. The president last night said we have to give law enforcement or police back their power. They're afraid to act, afraid they're going to lose their job, can't do their jobs, and the people who suffer most are the people who they so desperately want to protect. Joe Biden said yesterday in one of the couple of interviews he did that Donald Trump is rooting for more violence. He said he's pouring gasoline on the fire. Mr. Biden said, I condemn violence in any form, whether it's looting or whatever it is. We didn't hear that message last week. Why is Mr. Biden speaking out now?
It's very interesting. I do want to comment on Mrs. Dorn. We watched that obviously in the campaign headquarters. There wasn't a dry eye in the entire building. It was a very heartfelt, emotional moment. But to hear Joe Biden talk about condemning this type of violence now that took the life of Mrs. Dorn's husband is too little too late. This has been going on now for close to 90 days. And the only time we've heard from Joe Biden was to defund the police, which is an absolutely ridiculous notion. People want more police, not less. But also, the response comes at a time in which so many of these cities are way past a breaking point.
So what changed, Hogan? Why is Joe Biden speaking out now?
Well, I'll tell you, sadly, you've heard it on other networks. The polling is indicating that this is not helping him politically. And so when he does decide to come out and talk about it, he's doing it for purely political reasons. The Democrats have now basically admitted this. Some of these other TV hosts, as I mentioned, even said the quiet part out loud, that it's hurting Joe Biden politically. It is helping Donald Trump. So he needs to come out and address it. Don't come out and address it because people's businesses have been destroyed. Don't come out and address it because churches have been burned. People have lost their lives. No, only do it for politics. That shows you where the Democrat mentality is. And I have to say, these cities that are burning are absolutely controlled by Democrats. The president pointed that out last night. But we didn't hear anything about these Democrat-controlled cities being destroyed at the Democrat convention. How do you not mention what is gripping this nation right now with this lawlessness, this criminal behavior, this death and destruction? They completely ignored it. And there's a reason why all of these police unions that used to support Joe Biden are now coming out and supporting Donald Trump because they know he will always have their back.
You know, when you look at the Dorn family, the reason that she is speaking out now because the issue for their family is law and order. Her husband died as a result of it. And our country is so divided right now. There are two different Americas, Hogan. You've got some people that are progressives and the other side wants law and order and doesn't want to see our country going in the wrong direction. There are a lot of Democrats that spoke out saying reasons why they either voted for President Trump before or why they're changing their minds and they're going to vote for him this time. And the Republican Party or the administration put together this montage of Democrats that are now voting for Trump. Watch this.
But liberalism has changed, and I don't fit there anymore. I'm a Democrat. My parents are Democrats. I was a huge Obama supporter.
In the 2016 primary, I voted for Bernie Sanders.
I mean, I was a socialist.
It feels like Democrats sort of get people hooked on this drug of free money, where they basically say, you know, if you want your fix, you have to keep voting for us.
His entire campaign works for all Americans. That was a turning point for me. I want people to hear my story and know that you can actually go from being a Democratic socialist to a Trump supporter. I hope that Trump wins and that we can continue with the progress that he's made and the policies that he's put into place.
You know, Brian and Steve, it's interesting because that is what people are talking about. I know here in this city in New York, I've had friends saying they're worried about even going to sit outside because you can't sit inside restaurants because they're worried that someone will come up to their table and rob them, or there won't be a police officer around, or if you call 911, you're going to get a recording and they're going to say, we're backlogged and we can't come and help you.
Right.
Scary times.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a big story in the Washington Post today is like, people got to calm down, right and left. It's politics. Country, the same thing. We're all in this together. You might have different beliefs, but there's no reason to harass people because they want to go to dinner or they want to get in their car. And I think everyone's got to realize that there's no winners there. In fact, anybody who is for the Biden cause and was aggravated about Biden, you see the way Rand Paul was treated, and you lose your argument entirely. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is that now Donald Trump is going to go full bore. He's going to New Hampshire today. He's going to go down over to Texas and Louisiana over the weekend. And Joe Biden is going to have to go into situations where there's going to be no script. And that's what Donald Trump wants. And if he starts dropping the ball, Steve, I don't know how you feel about this, but that means I think that
Joe Biden
drops the ball. I look for Speaker Pelosi's warning. I don't think Joe Biden should debate. I think that is a precursor to get Joe Biden ready to bail on all three.
Well, there's been a lot about the debate. We heard the president a couple of days ago. I think he was joking, saying that Joe Biden should take a drug test before the debates. But, Joe Biden has said, you know what, bring it on. I'm ready for it. So let's see where it goes, because as Ainsley started this program out, she said the conventions are concluded, and now the race is on. All right, 6:17 in New York City. Ainsley, what's next?
Well, the parents of an ISIS victim give an emotional speech at the RNC last night while slamming the Obama administration for their response. And Marine Corps veteran Joey Jones is going to recount their...
The Obama administration said it was doing everything it could. The Trump administration is. Let me just say this. Kayla should be here. If Donald Trump had been president when Kayla was captured, she would be here today.
I don't know how those parents are able to get through that, describing her daughter, who is just a superstar, and what she went through and her last moments of life go beyond logical thought. The parents of humanitarian worker Kayla Mueller speaking out at the RNC, arguing their daughter might still be alive if the Obama administration took a tougher stance to rescue their daughter. Kayla Mueller was killed in 2015 after being held captive and tortured by ISIS for nearly 2 years. Here to react, Fox News contributor, Marine Corps veteran Joey Jones. Joey, what were your thoughts about the parents coming out saying what they said?
Listening to them speak last night reminded me when I joined the Marine Corps when I did in 2005. When evil like that exists in this world, the least our president can do is send our warriors to that evil, to send their souls straight back to hell where they came from. That's a pretty easy decision. And I'm glad President Trump has a pretty long list of victories when it comes to making that tough decision. And I understand there's political capital involved there that many presidents or candidates wouldn't take. Joe Biden's a perfect example of that. At least President Obama was willing to kill bin Laden because Joe Biden wasn't willing to do that. And I do appreciate President Trump for the way he's acted decisively, even if the risk was failure at being unpopular.
Joey, the problem is, most of all, you can't reward hostage taking because it'll just end up being more hostage taken. But they felt as though they weren't being listened to. No one seemed to care. Here's Kayla's dad.
Exactly.
What a difference a president makes. Under President Trump, U.S. Army Special Operators conducted a raid on al-Baghdadi's compound. After we learned that al-Baghdadi was killed, we learned something else. The operators named themselves Task Force 814 after August 14th, Kayla's birthday. And the mission was named Operation Kayla Mueller.
The detail and the mission and what her daughter went through in her final days and weeks of life, harrowing and telling.
I can't say that Kayla would have lived. For all I know, her fate was decided the day she was taken as a hostage. I don't lay that at President Obama's feet. But what we do know is it was a breakdown in communication with her own family that they suffered all those nights not knowing. There isn't an easy day in war, I can tell you that, in Afghanistan. But those nights get a hell of a lot easier when you know that you're there to do something, to bring someone like Kayla home, or to end someone's life like al-Baghdadi that doesn't deserve to live, rather than just being there in 2010 to hopefully help the 2012 election easier, which is how it felt for us. And so the communication with the American people, the communication with the families that President Trump has been able to do, and the decisiveness in taking action, it really is remarkable when you look at the last two presidents and the yo-yo that I lived through deploying, or the American people lived through not ever knowing what our goals were.
No president's perfect, from Eisenhower on down, even with his military experience. I get it. But when you look at the president, what President Obama, and what he did there, pulling all our troops out, allowing almost Baghdad to fall, ISIS to take root, establish a caliphate the size of New Jersey, and then start beheading Americans. And then when Syria used gas, he had a red line and he just forgot about it and went golfing. Allowed the Russians to get back into the Middle East. And yet they're bragging about their foreign policy. Dare I say they're vulnerable. Your thoughts?
Hey, listen, the greatest thing you could have done to dishonor our sacrifice for the 10 years after 9/11 was allow ISIS to form. You know, President Obama said there was some magic wand that Trump must have to create jobs. Well, there must have been another magic wand to defeat ISIS, to get the Taliban to the negotiation table, to bring some sort of calm in a world that was absolutely perilous in the Middle East for the entirety of Obama's presidency. And so all I can say is I'm not aware of every decision made and every policy kept, but what I can say is that our men and women in uniform believe that they are in a place that's much better than before President Trump took office.
And if you want to know more about Johnny Joey Jones and what he sacrificed for this country, it's on Fox Nation. That story is very moving as well. Joey, thanks for putting this in perspective. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Straight ahead, President Trump makes his case to voters in the final night of the convention. But did it resonate? Got the dials.
Republican National Convention has officially wrapped up. So how did the president's message and that of other featured speakers resonate with the American people? Here with the dials, partner and president of Maslansky and Partners, Lee Carter. Hey, Lee.
Hey, great to see you this morning.
Good to see you, too. Let's start with a soundbite from the president. And for folks at home, remember, the yellow line independents, red, obviously Republicans, and blue is Democrat. So this was the president last night slamming the Democratic agenda, saying that their party is extreme. Watch the dials.
At the Democrat convention, you barely heard a word about their agenda. But that's not because they don't have one. It's because their agenda is the most extreme set of proposals ever put forward by a major party nominee. Joe Biden may claim he is an ally of the light, but when it comes to his agenda, Biden wants to keep us completely in the dark.
Lee?
So you can see the Republicans gave this an A-, Independents a B-, and Democrats an F. Last night's speeches were not quite as popular as the other nights. I think that the president was much more subdued than he has ordinarily been. We've seen those dials go right off the charts. That said, this message did resonate with both Republicans and independents. When you listen to both sides, they're casting the other side as the one that is evil or the one that is going to, if you vote for them, the country is going to be over, or that's where the question really is, which one of those arguments is going to stick? Right now, it does look like independents are aligning some with Republicans, but it still remains to be seen.
Yeah, Rudy Giuliani was talking about law and order, which was a big theme last night, and he cleaned up New York years ago, and now New York is going in a different direction, and we're all concerned about it. Here he is talking about Democrats enabling all the violence.
Now today, my city is in shock. Murders, shootings, and violent crime are increasing at percentages unheard of in the past. New Yorkers wonder, how did we get overwhelmed by crime so quickly and decline so fast? Don't let Democrats do to America what they have done to New York.
Lee?
So you can see there, Republicans gave this a B+, independents a C+, and Democrats an F. Again, the message resonated just not as intensely as we've seen before. I think a lot of people are very, very concerned about law and order, their safety. They're very concerned about what's happening in cities, less so about what's happening in New York, more so what we're seeing in some of the other cities that are really the focus of most attention. I think that's part of the tension that you saw there and why the dials didn't go quite as high as we might otherwise see.
Okay, Lee, thank you so much. You've been so helpful last week and this week with the dials for the RNC and the DNC. Good to see you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you. We'll continue to play different sound bites from last night if you fell asleep because it was kind of long. All right, many in the media slamming President Trump's RNC speech, but how does it compare to their coverage of...
Meanwhile, harsh words for President Trump's RNC address from many in the media. But now, how does that coverage compare to when Joe Biden took center stage last week?
Let's bring in our old buddy, media reporter for The Hill, Joe Concha, joining us from my town. Hey, Joe, good morning to you.
Happy Friday.
Indeed. So, Joe, we just saw what a scary vision those particular analysts had watching Donald Trump. But when you listen to the media in general talking about Joe Biden's speech the week before, quite a contrast. Watch this.
It was all hopeful, upbeat, optimistic. It was a deeply optimistic speech, hopeful.
Embrace the light, who spoke against the darkness.
So hopeful. It's so positive.
Okay, so that's their opinion. Explain what we just witnessed.
Okay, I know you guys probably saved the tapes on this show, so
Right.
Before the RNC began, I joined Fox and Friends, and I said that dark was going to be the word that you're going to hear the most during this week. And sure enough, not that that was such a bold prediction, dark or darkness won by secretariat proportions as far as describing not only the president's speech, but speeches throughout the week. Now, you compare that to Joe Biden, to your point, and look, Van Jones gave away the whole game last week, and I like Van Jones. You could agree or disagree with his opinion, but at least he's honest in his convictions. And he said on CNN, quote, "We were prepared for it to be a terrible speech," speaking about Biden. "As long as he didn't embarrass himself, we were going to come out here and praise it." In other words, it's a predetermined analysis that was given with Biden. It was with Trump as well. But this RNC, guys, was very effective in terms of we heard from very few politicians. Instead, we heard from regular people telling their inspiring stories while supporting the president. And the RNC production had an energy and a pop to it, whether it's the vice president at Fort McHenry just yesterday or the president at the South Lawn last night in front of live audiences outside. It certainly resonated. And you compare that to the DNC. Hillary Clinton joined from her living room in New York. Michelle Obama joined from her living room in Martha's Vineyard. Joe Biden, the nominee, couldn't even leave Delaware to go to Wisconsin because apparently going to Wisconsin, if you're a Democratic candidate, isn't a thing anymore. You just don't do it. He joined as well from Delaware. So comparing it to the Zoom meetings that we saw last week, I'm telling you, the Biden campaign saw no bounce in their polling after their convention. I've never seen that before. Usually get 5, 6 points, 0 points for Biden. And look, we've lived a full decade now in 8 months, right? When you think about it, the president was impeached this year. Do we remember that? Then a pandemic that shut down the economy, the country, a deadly pandemic. And then we see chaos in our streets. And the fact that the Biden campaign in battleground states is essentially tied in the Real Clear Politics index of polls. So I'm not cherry picking one poll. I'm going by 8. The fact that these two campaigns are tied, given everything that we've seen this year, must be disturbing for the Biden campaign at this point, guys.
All right, Joe. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
You're welcome.
I guess I have to. Do I have to say goodbye because I do have one quick story to tell. Oh, sorry.
Please do.
Are we
No,
still here?
go ahead. No,
Yes.
you got to tell us
anyway,
now.
My car was stolen 2 weeks ago out of my driveway, not far from where Steve lives. It was recovered in Newark, New Jersey. So now I have to go see exactly what recovered looks like because apparently the car was crashed. So that's my Friday. Hope you guys have a good one as well because this should be interesting.
No kidding.
What's going on? I know so many people that have had their cars stolen. 2 of my friends, too. You're my third friend.
Yeah, the whole thing of not having a key that you put in the ignition is a bad invention.
Really?
Because you could very easily leave it in the car when you're getting kids out and dogs out and groceries out.
Oh, yeah.
And now apparently there's this technology where thieves can actually, from the bottom of the driveway, see if you have your keys left in your car or not. So yeah, I just admitted on national television before millions of people that I left my keys in my car. But you know what? This is apparently a thing because 9 cars were stolen in my neighborhood, which is quite remarkable, quite frankly.
And
so
that-
I'm not the only idiot, apparently. Anyway, enough about
and
me.
that
Gotta go, guys.
concludes
Bye-bye.
The Life of Joe Concha, episode 9. All right, Joe. Thank you.
Or 1-800-SCHWIN.
All right, thanks, Joe. Good luck with
terrible.
all that. All right, Jillian has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
Good morning, Steve. Make sure you take your keys with you.
No
Jeez.
kid. I got them right now.
Thank goodness. All right, let's begin with this Fox News alert, guys, because Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is stepping down from office over health issues. Abe announcing his resignation this morning, saying he did not want his illness to get in the way of decision making. His resignation comes just days after he became Japan's longest-serving prime minister, leading the country for 8 years. Abe says he will remain in the post until his successor is chosen. A mandatory jail sentence for assaulting a police officer could soon be eliminated in Virginia. Senate Democrats passing a bill that would keep the charge as a felony, but allows a judge or jury to decide whether to reduce it to a misdemeanor if the officer is not hurt. Several Republicans are slamming the measure, saying it disrespects police. Democrats say it makes a distinction between serious and minor assaults. The bill now moves to the state's House of Delegates. Former Heisman Trophy winner Herschel Walker speaking out against those who unfriend others over their political disagreements. After defending the president during his RNC speech, Walker telling USA Today in part saying, quote, "Losing friends has been a big cost. I lost some friends, and that's what's so strange about it. How could in a country like America you disagree with someone that you now want to injure that person? Walker adding that the president never asked him to speak at the RNC that he offered. So look at your headlines. I'll send it back to you.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Jillian. Hey, let's go over to Janice. She's been tracking her.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
On August 28, 1963, 57 years ago today, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King delivered his iconic I Have a Dream speech for the March on Washington. Here with reflections on his words, his niece and Fox News contributor, Dr. Alveda King, author of the book, We're Not Colorblind, Healing the Racial Divide. Dr. King, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone.
Indeed. How do you and your family regard what your uncle said 57 years ago today?
When I think about the words of my uncle, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my parents were there at the March on Washington. I, of course, was 12 years old. I was at home. We were able to watch a lot of it. And so I remember those words. I remember the dream. The dream is still alive. The legacy, life, and legend of Martin Luther King Jr. is still alive. One part that people don't talk as much about is that uncashed check, what we called a bounced check in those days. And the check is being made good on today with historically black colleges and universities, opportunity zones, the employment rate for blacks, and everybody was very strong before COVID. And we do thank God for that first, and President Trump for that as well.
Sure. You know, I'm old enough. I remember the 60s, and I remember there were a lot of protests. There were protests over race and over the Vietnam War and things like that. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was remarking that, you know, the nation today is so divided. You can't really disagree with a lot of people with their opinion. And the person said, well, don't you blame Donald Trump for that? Because his rhetoric is so blunt. You know, he has contributed to this nasty tone in the country. Do you think that's true?
In the 1960s, our home was bombed. You know, my dad, Reverend A.D. King, worked very closely with my uncle, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Donald Trump is not responsible for the Molotov cocktails, the bombing of the home of my parents. Martin Luther King Jr.'s home was bombed. And so when you have those times with that hostile force coming in, you need strength. You need someone who believes in God. And so the tone today, the Christian church has to rise up as well. All church leaders, all spiritual leaders, regardless of denominations and faiths maybe, but the Christians need to be standing up. We were taught to protest peacefully,
right?
Speak about things that are good and to solve problems with prayer.
What would Dr. Martin Luther King say about what is going on in America's streets today? It started with demonstrations and protests, but frequently it has devolved into violence and looting and arson.
Thankfully, we still have the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We must learn to live together as brothers, and I'll add as sisters, or perish together as fools. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So police brutality, mob brutality, gang brutality, the problems with abortion, the war on the womb, the little babies in the womb. He would say that rioting and violence are not the answer. We have to resolve these peacefully, and he would certainly agree that we have to pray. So blessedly, we have his words, and he would encourage us to resolve this without the violence. I'm sure he would.
Indeed. All right. Dr. Alveda King. Dr. King, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Still ahead on this Friday.
This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our cherished destiny.
He truly loves and believes in our country. He believes in the people of this country.
I am free. Hallelujah. My faith in justice and mercy was rewarded.
Together we built the greatest economy the world has ever seen, and we will do it again. Be true to who you are now. not who the Democrats used to be.
Donald Trump is the man with the courage, the vision, and the ability.
We can have 4 more years of President Trump, or you can have no safety, no justice, and no peace.
The Republican Party will remain the voice of the patriotic heroes who keep America safe and salute the American